In the year 2038, a brilliant scientist named George Almore lives alone deep within a dense forest in Japan. He works inside a vast, high-tech robotics compound known as Artisan Robotics. His only companions are two robots he created, J1 and J2. These machines aren't just assistants, they're part of his daily life. J2, the more advanced of the two, has even developed a fondness for cartoons. One day, she tells George about a strange dream where they were driving a car. She doesn't remember the details, but she says she felt sad when she woke up. Later, J2 informs George that someone wants to speak with him. George already knows who it is. He soon connects with a woman named Jules, his wife. But something feels off. Jules appears cold and distant. She tells him this will be their last conversation and hopes he's happy where he is. Then the signal cuts off. Suddenly, George finds himself in a memory, sitting in a car with Jules. They laugh, and she tells him to switch to self-driving mode. But George refuses. He doesn't trust the car's automated system because he didn't build it himself. This memory fades, and George is snapped back to reality by a call from his boss, Simone. Simone is not pleased. It's been 2 years, and George still hasn't produced anything useful, just 2 failed prototypes, as she calls J1 and J2. She reminds him that he has only 3 years to complete his research. Before hanging up, she demands he back up his data and secure the lab. After the call, George vents to J2. He warns her not to let Simone find out too much. If she does, she might shut everything down. J2 reassures her sister J1, telling her she's not horrible, despite what Simone said. Later, while a video of Jules plays in the background, George begins work on a third prototype, J3. Unlike the others, J3 is designed to look fully human. But George doesn't know that J2 is quietly watching him from the hallway. When George and J2 step outside to fix the reception system, J2 seems distant. She finally asks why George won't let her help anymore. Weren't they once a team? George insists he isn't replacing her. Still, J2 feels hurt. She sees how advanced the new robot is and wonders if she's being left behind. George tries to end the talk, sending her back inside before the prototype gets damaged. Back at his lab, George finishes installing artificial intelligence into J3's brain. But something unexpected happens. She starts accessing fragments of Jules's memories. George gently calms her down and puts her into hibernation to reduce the mental strain. The next morning, George finds a stray dog at the compound's entrance. He tries to shut the door using voice command, but the system fails. J2 pretends to know nothing, but she looks pleased when George asks for her help. As they work outside, a vehicle suddenly pulls up. 2 men from the archive company, Mr. Sinclair and Mr. Melvin, step out. George quickly orders J1 and J2 to stay hidden. The visitors are there to inspect the archive unit because they've received an alert related to his wife's digital afterlife status. Mr. Melvin suspects someone tampered with the security system. George denies everything, but tension builds. Mr. Melvin warns him that storing a dead loved one in a home archive unit is strictly regulated. If it's being used illegally, they have the authority to remove it by force. After they leave, George knows it's only a matter of time before they uncover the truth. He rushes to complete J3. When she wakes again, she seems overwhelmed and confused. George reassures her. Her mind is just trying to connect scattered memories. As J3 stabilizes, George begins testing her senses. He gives her different flavors to taste, like vanilla and lime, and checks her reading ability and empathy levels. When she asks why these tests matter, George says they'll help him understand her personality better. J3 notices a scar on George's face. He explains he got it from an accident. She then mentions her strange dreams, though she's unsure if they're dreams or memories. Later, J1 enters the room and introduces herself. George explains that J1's brain development halted at a very young stage. J2 was the next step, more advanced like a teenager. And J3, she's built with a fully developed brain. But unknown to George, J2 is watching everything on CCTV. She sees the comparisons and revelations, and jealousy starts to grow inside her. That night, as George sleeps, J2 sneaks into the basement and destroys some of his equipment. Meanwhile, George dreams of Jules. He tells her that he's been offered a 3-year research contract. Jules is proud, but when he says the job is in Japan, the mood suddenly changes. Tension hangs in the air. Just then, a car crashes into them. George jolts awake to an alarm. The window is shattered, and J3 is gone. Fearing the worst, George runs to the basement, desperately searching for her. The next day, George still can't find J3. But he doesn't give up. He searches the entire forest using 2 aerial drones, scanning every inch. Still nothing. Then, unexpectedly, Jules appears. They talk about the archive technology, software that lets people interact with the memories of their deceased loved ones. George explains that clients can get up to 200 hours of face-to-face interaction with someone who has passed. Jules questions him. Why would anyone want to speak to the dead? George answers with quiet honesty. He just wants to say goodbye because he misses her. But Jules disagrees. She tells him she doesn't want to be trapped in a machine after death. She fades away again, leaving George even more lost. J3 is still missing. Late that afternoon, George returns to the lab. As he opens a drawer, J3 suddenly falls out. She's weak, disoriented, and calls him a monster. George tries to calm her down, speaking gently and explaining everything to regain her trust. He reveals that he extracted Jules' memory signals from the archive system. It wasn't easy. The computer couldn't read them at first. But J3's brain isn't just a machine. It has a biochemical core. George managed to translate its analog signals into a digital format using pattern recognition. After a year of testing, he finally detected Jules' essence. From there, he built J1, then J2, and now J3. He promises J3 there won't be a fourth version. As they talk, George uncovers the truth. J2 had taken J3 into the document room the night before and told her she was meant to replace Jules. J2 also warned her that George would eventually replace her too, just like he replaced J1. Then J2 locked J3 inside a drawer. George is furious. He confronts J2. She apologizes, saying she only wanted to prepare J3 and didn't mean to hurt anyone. But George is too angry to listen. He shuts J2 down and storms off. Later, Simone calls George. The archive company is suspicious. They think George built his robots using stolen archive technology, and they're threatening legal action. Simone tries to calm him, saying their lawyers are handling it. But George knows his secret is no longer safe. Days pass. George visits J2, who is now awake but limping. She notices something wrong with her legs and suspects George took her parts. He denies it at first, but eventually admits the truth. While she was shut down, he dismantled her legs to improve J3. Now, J3 has a fully human-like form, coated in synthetic skin. J2 is devastated. She feels betrayed, used, replaced. She begins wandering alone, taking long walks to the nearby waterfall. Eventually, she loses power and collapses. J1 alerts George, who rushes to her. But when he checks her, there's no physical damage. J2 quietly tells him that just because nothing's broken on the outside doesn't mean she's okay. George, frustrated, brushes it off and tells her to stop being dramatic. Meanwhile, George grows closer to J3. They dance, laugh, and share quiet moments. J2, now broken in spirit, watches them through the wall. The connection she longed for is gone. One rainy night, she pets J1 as if saying goodbye, leaves a letter, and walks out into the storm. She makes her way to the lake and slowly enters the water. Her body shuts down, her signals vanish. George searches for her desperately, but it's too late. The system announces J2's connection is lost forever. Though he never finds her body, George buries her belongings and holds a quiet funeral for her. That night, something changes. J3 receives a portion of Jules' memory data. For the first time, she feels the depth of love between George and Jules. She lays on George's bed, and for a moment, he mistakes her for Jules. He kisses her, but when he opens his eyes and sees J3, he recoils and tells her to leave. The next morning, George continues working on J3. While she's unconscious, her mind flashes with Jules' memories, fragments of a car crash, a police officer requesting an archive machine, and a shocking discovery. Jules was pregnant. Later that day, Simone calls in a rage. The archive company found J2's body at the bottom of the lake, proof that George used stolen data. She informs him he's been fired, and the company is sending a recovery team to seize his work. J3, overhearing this, believes Simone is the enemy. In anger, while George is away, J3 answers a call from Jules on the archive machine. She tells Jules that George isn't available, and that she'll take care of him once Jules is gone. Jules is confused, but J3 is referring to the expiration of Jules' archive. When George returns, he quickly takes the phone and reassures Jules he'll see her soon. After the call, J3 realizes the painful truth. George is planning to erase her consciousness and overwrite it with Jules. She panics. Like any sentient being, she doesn't want to die. She screams at George that Jules is already dead. In a breakdown, she grabs a gun and demands the truth. George confesses that the company wants to study J3's advanced AI. She wonders, how does she even know all of this? George finally admits it. J3 was created because he blames himself for Jules' death. He wanted to rebuild a life they never got to finish. But in that moment, J3 realizes the deeper truth. George is dead. His consciousness is fading inside the archive. All of this, his work, his love, his struggle, it's all part of a mind refusing to let go. J3 tells him he must move on. George asks for her consent to upload Jules into her body. With no time left, she agrees. After a short shutdown, J3 wakes up, now speaking, moving, and behaving like Jules. George is overjoyed for a moment. Then the phone rings. It's the archive company. Their recovery team has mysteriously vanished, unable to retrieve George or his robots. His subconscious is trying to protect him from the truth. Still, George walks toward the phone. J3 begs him not to answer. It will reveal the painful truth. He picks it up anyway. On the other end, Jules is crying. She says the archive company told her George's consciousness is about to disappear. This might be their last conversation. She brings their daughter to say goodbye. George's eyes fill with tears as he listens to their voices. The truth hits him all at once. He's been dead this whole time. Slowly, peacefully, he fades away. The call ends. Jules hangs up and walks away, holding their young daughter in her arms. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.